So let's say you found a skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
All right, we are live with Kent with Bent. Is this 43? 43.
It's one of my favorite prime numbers.
Kent with
Unless it's not prime.
Kentwork Orange. So, welcome everybody. Those few of you who are here and not watching some other things that people apparently consider important.
What is this? The Extra Bowl?
I don't know. But that is not something we're going to be discussing. We're here for Kent with Bent. And I have a pretty strict, this isn't a political channel. I have my opinions. You don't get to know them. Because, for reasons. Yeah. Interesting thing was, before we went live, I was having not enough upload speed for streaming, even according to YouTube. And then, I just checked my speed, and then suddenly it went all the way up to normal. Isn't it fun how that happens?
That's so crazy.
I know.
It sounded great. I could hear you the whole time.
Well, that's good, but YouTube said that they weren't receiving enough streaming data to keep the stream smooth, and that people were going to get buffering. And, I'm not okay with buffering. Buffering was invented by the devil to make our lives more difficult. Just like dinosaurs. Invented by Satan.
Possibly.
Yeah, it's possible. Okay. Alright, so we're going to continue with the CSE 101. And we may end up going a little bit short tonight. So, not a big deal there. So, but we are finishing, well, I don't know that we're going to finish it completely, but we're going for the end of Kent Hovind's CSE 101, session 2 of his CSE 101, which apparently has the title, Why Satan Hate Us. Yeah.
Or isn't it, what is it, like video why Satan hate us? Or topic why
Why Satan Hate Us.
Yeah.
So, alright, let's go over the rules, because we got rules, unlike the street, where they ain't got no rules. The rules are, and this is a drinking game, which, by the way, we do not encourage that you play. You play at your own risk. We accept no liability or responsibility for...
Drink Watermelon Wonder like I do.
There you go. You'll be pretty safe there. Unless it's a bad batch.
It's a good batch.
Okay. So, we drink whenever Kent Hovind gets something right that he didn't just quote, which isn't too often, but it's usually every episode.
At least once an episode.
Yeah. He's not always wrong. We drink also whenever it's too stupid. Let's see. We drink when there's
also at least once per episode.
Usually more. Also, we drink whenever Kent tells a joke that just lands flat and nobody laughs at.
Also, at least once. Well,
yeah.
Not necessarily.
Since we've implemented it. Yeah. We also drink for some somewhat random things. So Godzilla and Mothra will come around every once in a while.
I don't know if it worked.
Maybe it did.
It's gonna do.
There you go. Let's take a quick drink for Godzilla. Also, if you are a channel member, you have access to the Godzilla emojis. If you super chat with one of those, we take a drink for that. Also, there's a few people who can come by who have, kaiju-themed profiles, and when they super chat, we also take a drink for that. If we try to super chat for every time anyone sent a Godzilla emoji in regular chat, I mean, we'd run out of drinks way too fast. So we don't do that. If you want us to do the super chat drink for the Godzilla thing, you can join the channel. It's $1.99. It's really cheap.
That's it.
Yep, that's the minimum.
And that's
you can go
per
from
day,
there,
right?
No, that's per month.
Per month?
Yeah.
Wow. That's less than a cup of coffee.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you know what's crazy though is Kent Hovind, his 777 club, he asks people to give $1 a day.
$1 a day?
I'm like, dude.
Depends on where you get your coffee from.
Oh,
that's probably less than a cup.
Christopher Hugan for $25 dues for everyone doing the Star Trek D&D game. Please split it and then really enjoy it. So I will ask them who wants some of that. I know some people are weird about taking donated super chats, so I also will have to do some conversion because I think everyone's doing the USD. So I will discuss with them exactly how they want that split between us. But I do really appreciate that, Christopher Hugan. Yeah, that reminds me, on my off-topic channel, Top Hats Off, we are running a Star Trek Adventures role-playing game using the Klingon Empire sourcebook. So Bent here is our intrepid captain, and I am the GM.
Oh, yeah.
His brother is the pilot, or the helmsman. T.D. Lane is the first officer and weapons guy. We've got the engineer is isn't that your brother? No, he's the helmsman. I don't think we have a chief engineer, really.
We have. I don't know. Who
Well, when we need a chief engineer, we'll just get
the
it.
names are in Klingon. I don't know yet.
Oh, and Adam Morgan says for $2, this stream is sponsored by the like button, which also means, by the way, I'm not getting the live chat on my feed here, so I need to refresh my studio. Shouldn't change anything, but I don't know. YouTube's being weird. So, oh, there it is. Finally, I actually get live chat. And look, there's a bunch of people here who I haven't been responding to because I thought no one was chatting. Oh, man, I'm so sorry, guys. Ilya Moon's here, Smitty's here. Eric Vierthaler for $4.99 says, you've been on YouTube for over a decade. I've been on YouTube for over a decade, and I've met a lot of people over it. Dapper Dino is one of my favorites. Favorite people who I met from YouTube. And also, as far as I know, the only one you ever met in person. Because Eric came down to near where I live to visit his grandmother, and so for a while we grabbed some lunch, and we went to the exhibit of the Victoria T-Rex specimen that has been mounted and is been in Arizona for a while, and I believe soon she's moving to somewhere else because it's a traveling exhibit. But yeah, I had a lot of fun meeting Eric in person. And yeah, I'm sorry that I have not been seeing the chat. I really feel bad about that. But let's start the video. We can chill stuff later on. Oh, but $1.99 from Author J, which means we take a drink.
Oh yeah.
Thanks for the break from the stress today. You are welcome.
I feel the same way. This is a break from the stress today for me.
Yeah, same. So, okay, let's get some Kent Hovind in. Apologies in advance.
Who gets to decide who is a scientist?
It's pretty easy. Here's my definition. Are you publishing research in a peer-reviewed publication, whether it be online or in print or both? Are you doing that? Then you are a scientist. If you are not, if you're working on it, then I'd call you, you're sort of like a parascientist. You're almost there. And yeah, once you do that, you're a scientist. And as long as you continue to work on research for publication, and you occasionally get published for that work, you remain a scientist. Once you stop, maybe now you're a former scientist. But yeah, you have to do science. That's all it takes. You do science. All right. So we'll get more Kent. I love these tracking problems.
Science means knowledge. So a person who is in the pursuit or study of knowledge is a scientist. Also, if you look at what happened in the Soviet Union, 10 years ago, if a teacher stood up in class and said, kids, I don't believe in communism. Capitalism is a much better system.
Oh, hey, it's a red whale's birthday. Happy birthday, I'm a red whale. I hope you are having a wonderful birthday, and that you are paying enough attention to celebrating it yourself, that you're not being completely distracted. Oh, yeah, so AIG, that includes AIG because they have a peer-reviewed journal. So here's one of my requirements for a peer-reviewed journal. If the peer-reviewed journal has conclusion requirements for your paper, doesn't count. That's it. If it says we will not publish results which say these things in the submission guidelines, not a real peer-reviewed journal. It might be reviewed by people, but it does not meet the basic definition of peer-reviewed journal, which is an honest attempt to make sure that the paper in question is rigorous and follows proper methodology. But if a paper is rigorous and follows proper methodology, but comes to a conclusion contrary to the consensus, it should still be published. An example in paleontology would be the Ornithoscelida hypothesis that says that theropods and ornithischians form a group that excludes sauropods, who are actually basally branching. and would technically then be outside of Dinosauria. But that vastly contradicted hundreds of years, well, like 150 years of very, very well-established science. It was published. And also, Jens van Broekhoven, for €2, all these numbers and symbols, €2 sends a Godzilla emoji, so we'll take a drink for that. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's continue on with some Kent.
What would happen to that teacher? Gulag, right? Siberia, huh? You like snow, huh? Yeah, we can fix that, right?
Okay, but what happens to people in the U.S. who go against the scientific consensus? If they're shown to be right, then they get, you know, famous. And if they're not, well, then, I mean, they usually get laughed at, but, you know, thrown in gulags. Even Kent, who was thrown in prison, wasn't thrown in prison for being a creationist. He was thrown in prison for failing to file many taxes. Right. And
breaking laws that he intentionally broke.
Yes, and that he knew were, in fact, laws.
And then he knew were laws.
Yeah, so... mm-hmm. It's, yeah... I'm going to say this. This isn't necessarily common among Christians in general, but it's common among the sort of evangelical fundamentalists, which is a group to which Kent Hovind belongs, that having a society that does not simply agree with you at every step of the way as a whole is not the same thing as being persecuted, right? Christians in communist Russia were persecuted, right? Because basic, relatively inoffensive Christian activities, like going to church, were heavily punished. And you couldn't hold some jobs if you attended church, right? Like there were some jobs where if you ended up going to church, you would be fired and maybe also sent to the gulag. There were instances where teachers would follow kids, would stand outside churches and recording which kids actually attended church services so they could berate them in class later. That would be persecution. That's not happening in the United States. Or if it is, that teacher is acting in a completely inappropriate manner, and it should be brought to the attention of the school board, and they should be fired. Or at least suspended.
And they probably would be.
Oh yeah, probably. It's actually pretty hard to fire a teacher in the US, but that would probably be something that even the union would be like, ooh, that's pretty iffy. So, yeah. If you want to find persecuted Christians, it's not hard to do. Go to the Middle East or go to China. You know, you can find plenty of persecuted Christians. But, not having the United States government agree to just be run by evangelicals is not the same thing as persecution. Sorry, Ken.
If they survived. Then the teachers get up in school and say, all teachers believe in evolution. Or all teachers believe in communism, or whatever. They try to use this. See, anybody who wants to use majority opinion as an argument, as some kind of evidence, red flags ought to go up all over the place. Hold on just a minute. Majority opinion doesn't mean a thing. You go.
I feel like, okay, let's say you knew nothing about cars, right? And you found out that the majority of, say, auto mechanics said that you should get periodic oil changes. And by majority, I mean like 99.98% of auto mechanics. And you could only find like, you know, maybe 50 auto mechanics in the entire United States that said, who cares? That would actually be a pretty decent reason to say, maybe I should get oil changes periodically.
Yeah, or you could just learn about oil changes.
I mean, yeah, but let's say you don't have time for that, right?
Well,
expert opinion means something.
Does Kent not have time for it, though?
Well, no, he has a monetary interest in not understanding it.
Actually learn what he's teaching.
Yeah, yeah. So the thing is, from a strictly, you know, logical standpoint, yes, argumentum ad popularum is in fact fallacious. However, in your everyday life, if you're taking the majority opinion from experts, not just, you know, Joe down the street, then you're playing it pretty safe. Do they get it wrong sometimes? Yeah, of course. But do they get it wrong most of the time? No. And if you're not an expert in the field and all of the experts are saying you're wrong, chances are that you're wrong. It's the bet that you would want to place if you're a betting person. Or dinosaur.
go to headhunting society,
Dinosaurs can be people.
the majority
Fair.
believes it's okay to cut somebody's head off and eat them. Well, it doesn't mean it's right. And so what they do, they try to silence the opposition. Rather than using logic, they use intimidation. And if a scientist does not go along with what everybody else believes, he's likely to lose his job. A couple days ago, Dan and I sat in the living room of Robert Gentry.
You know, if that were true, then you know who would have been fired? Alan Fiducia, the creationist's favorite paleoornithologist, who thinks that birds aren't dinosaurs. Everyone knows he's wrong. He's got his job still. If I remember correctly, he's about to talk about Gentry, and if I remember correctly, Gentry wasn't actually ever a permanent, wasn't ever like a tenured professor, and his contract was up for renewal, and it wasn't renewed. He wasn't even fired. He just wasn't continued. He just wasn't hired again, basically.
In Knoxville, Tennessee, who worked at Oak Ridge Laboratories. He's a scientist. He was one of the world's experts on the disposal of nuclear waste. But he wrote all sorts of articles. They were published in all sorts of major journals until they found out he's a creationist. Right away, shut him off. Nobody will publish anything he writes anymore. Because if they do, then they're...
No, it's because his polonium halo stuff was nonsense. He's even since essentially had to admit that it didn't make sense. So Robert Gentry's work on polonium halos basically said, because polonium 218 or something like that, has a half-life of it's like 3 milliseconds, right? Polonium 218 barely exists. But he was finding things consistent with evidence of polonium decay in rocks without associated other elements. The problem was that polonium is part of the decay chain for uranium-238. And so one of the other problems is that an intermediate is actually a gas, and gases can migrate through the crystal lattice of rock. And all of these supposed mysterious polonium halos were associated with uranium-238. So the much more likely explanation than that God just put some polonium-218 in the rocks at the moment of creation just to be like, haha, see, I did it instantaneously despite all the other evidence.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Or, U-238 decayed into a gas, which then diffused into another part of the rock, then decayed, then to polonium-218, then the polonium-218 decayed, leaving behind a polonium halo. Yeah. Also, some other decay products of uranium-238 leave indistinguishable halos, but have much longer half-lives. Which again, migrates away, decays a few times, then finally gives a decay that is almost identical to polonium. None of this was taken into account, and it completely explains the polonium halo quote-unquote problem. And yeah, basically polonium halos are completely expected and consistent with the standard model. But for some reason, Gentry decided to write a whole book about how they proved the Earth was young. Although he never claimed that you could use them as a dating method, so it's still not even clear how that would have worked.
Did you read the book? Maybe he explains it.
I read it,
The other chapters.
I read it, but it was like when I was in high school or something. It's a really old book. Polonium halos is a super old argument.
They're giving credibility to a creationist. And they want to be able to stand up and say, you creationists never publish in scientific journals. Well, yeah, we try, but you won't take our stuff. So that's like somebody standing up in the Soviet Union saying, well...
Oh, by the way, Andrew Cummings asks if I prefer the 4 billion or the 3.5 billion year old age for life on Earth. I actually don't have a strong preference there. I don't know enough about the evidence to really have an informed opinion, so I just don't. Yeah, I'm like that on a lot of things actually in biology. I'm just like, I don't know enough, so I don't feel comfortable commenting on it. If I had to take a guess, I would probably say that 3.5 seems more likely, just because I feel like Earth would have been more stable, but that's just, that's no better of a guess than basically anyone's. So don't take that as being worth a damn. It's just my completely worthless random guess.
Hey, capitalists, there aren't any capitalist teachers. Obviously, it can't be good. It doesn't take a freshman law student to figure that out. That's not good logic. But the technique that the media uses all the time is to try to divide religion from science. We'll get into more when we get into seminar part 4
different, Ken.
of how Charles Lyell did that in his book, Principles of Geology, clear back in 1830. He's one of the guys, there are many people in the early 1800s, who tried to drive a wedge between the Bible and science. Truth of the matter is, all of the branches of science were started by creationists.
Kind of.
From 1600, 1700, all the major branches of science. I defy people to name me one advancement we have in scientific information because of the evolution theory.
New antibiotics. Let's see. The ability to track the spread of infectious diseases through genome sequencing. The ability to, let's see, make...
How about making insulin with E. coli?
Probably, although you could then make some arguments that like maybe would have discovered like genetics and genetic engineering without that, so it's sort of an iffy one. Okay. But our significantly advanced ability to breed domestic organisms much more quickly than we have in the past. For instance, many of the foods that you eat are a combination of evolutionary mechanisms and introducing higher rates of mutation through what's called atomic gardening. I don't know if you know what this is. So atomic gardening is where you place a radiation source, like just a hunk of radioactive rock, right, in the center of a garden, and you build circles around that are garden patches, right, and you plant fruit or vegetables in them. And the radiation causes a higher amount of mutations, which gets diminished, like the number of extra mutations gets diminished as you go away from the center, because that's, less radiation flux. And then when a mutation you like crops up, you take that plant out, and you breed it outside of the atomic garden. And so one of the most famous examples of a common foodstuff that has been made this way is ruby red grapefruits. Ruby red grapefruits are the result of evolution that has been accelerated through the use of radiation. So there you go.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want to work as a gardener in an atomic garden, and we don't really use those anymore. But I mean, it's still a thing. But yeah, there you go. And here's the other thing: even if evolution weren't useful, that doesn't make it not true. Like if I said to you, "Oh, hey, what practical use has the study of stellar spectra ever given us?" I don't actually know of anything like as an advanced medicine or transportation or anything like that, as far as I can tell. Has it made it easier to grow crops? But that doesn't mean that, stellar spectra don't exist and that we can't learn things about stars from them. So it's this, like, weird thing where it's like, oh, if it didn't help me, it doesn't count. I'm like, no, that's not how science works. Yeah. It's like, take, like, Gutsy Gibbons' research, where she's doing the effects of social systems in primates on sexual dimorphism. Chances are that's not going to result in a medical breakthrough. It doesn't mean she's not doing science, and it doesn't make her wrong.
Is that why we have light bulbs?
No.
Computers? Plastics? Space shuttles? What good has...
Well, in terms of plastics, it's why we now have bacteria that can eat many plastics.
Has the evolution theory done?
We just mentioned a few.
Come up with some during the course. Or if you watch our video, send me some. I would like to know what good has the theory done.
That would be fun. Maybe we should call him and let him know. Not right now, though.
No, send this video to him.
Oh. I should send him a letter with the HTML with the link just written out, typed in there, the URL.
Yeah, you can do that.
See, if a person believes there's a creator...
Oh, wait, Kent Hovind got two things right. We don't get cars or space shuttles, or I guess technically plastic, so I'm going to take a drink for that. None of those things are in... Oh, actually, no, plastics don't count either, because we use the theory of evolution and how it applies to index fossils to help us find oil wells. Without evolution and the long age of the Earth, you literally can't find oil wells. So, still taking a drink for the automobile, or what was it, like automobiles and
I don't know,
space shuttles or something? Yeah. But actually, yeah, we actually do rely on evolution to find oil. Pretty heavily, too.
Then he's going to look for design and order in nature. Why did the creator do it that way? Oh, I bet there's a reason for that. Let me think what it is.
Yeah, okay, Kent. What's the reason for leeches? They don't form a significant prey source for anything in any environment. They spread diseases that could just not be there. They aren't important pollinators. They aren't important decay. You know, they don't do anything important like nitrogen fixation in soil. The world could be bereft of leeches, and the only thing that would happen would be that other species would be better off. The same thing with the North American botfly. It's essentially extinct in most of its range. It only exists now in a few parts of Central America because it was actively eradicated. The reason it was eradicated was because it would swarm in occasionally, lay eggs under the skin of huge swaths of animals, including human, livestock, and wildlife, like deer and wolves. And in some cases, animals would become so infested with them that they would die as the larvae wriggled out of the flesh of the hosts, having eaten them from the inside. So it was eradicated. Guess how many species went extinct as a result of that? None. Why did God make the botfly? There are still other botfly species all over the place. They're still pretty common in Africa and can cause serious problems. What about mosquitoes? They're only minor pollinators and minor food sources for some organisms. As far as I know, there are no plants that are obligately pollinated by mosquitoes, and they don't form the majority of any organism's diet. Their role in pollination could be easily taken over by other insects. And they spread horrible, horrible, horrible diseases all over the place. If they were wiped out, it's unlikely any other organisms would go extinct. They're not exactly a keystone species anywhere. What's the point of mosquitoes? I'm actually just going to take a drink. Because it's just so stupid.
Population control?
Yeah.
The deadliest animal in the world?
They are, actually. By a huge margin. It's not even a question that mosquitoes are by far the deadliest group of organisms to humans. And so, yeah, it's these things where it's like, oh, I wonder, maybe there's a reason God did that. It's like, if there is, if God directly created leeches and botflies and mosquitoes, sorry, but God's kind of a dick. And it seems like the reason he did it is to just be a jerk. And by a jerk, I mean torturing innocent animals to death in horrible, slow, painful ways. It's the kind of thing that if you did it to an animal, you'd be rightfully arrested for animal abuse. But apparently, God gets to create botflies. And it's a purpose. I guess that purpose is just to torture animals, but there you go. Apparently that cow was really, really sinful, so God sent a plague of botflies. Sorry, rancher. I guess. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's just like, man, there's a reason people have moral questions about the sort of fundamentalist interpretation of God that, like these independent Baptists have. It's not a nice guy.
One guy named Murray was reading his Bible one day, and it says in Psalm chapter 8, "Whatsoever passeth through the paths of the sea." He said, I wonder if there are paths in the sea. When they sailed from Europe over to America, they took the shortest route. Murray spent a lifetime studying currents in the ocean.
No, wait.
And discovered because of ocean currents...
No, they didn't. No, they didn't. For virtually the entire time after, the Americas were well known and charted out, they followed the currents down the coast of Africa, swinging off west after the currents turn west, and then coming back up. I mean, this is just a blatant lie. At no point past the discovery of the Americas. And the reason that Columbus more or less just sailed west, because he didn't know what he was going to find anywhere else. Like, he just didn't know. It was uncharted territory. So he was just like, I guess I'll just head west and just take the wind. But since then, there's a reason that we call it the triangle trade, right? Where it goes from Europe to Africa to the Americas near the Caribbean and then back. And there's a reason why people sailing from what's now the east coast of the United States or the east coast of Canada went up and north and then turned east. And they didn't just start off like north, east, headed straight for, the British Isles. And the currents were known to ancient people. Anyone who was in the ocean or the seas knew about currents. Like the Mediterranean currents have been used for thousands of years, for longer than the Bible has existed. The writers of the Psalms knew about ocean currents. This is not a recent discovery. Yeah, it's like, oh, the Psalms talks about ocean currents. Well, yeah, because they knew about ocean currents. It's like the Psalms talk about the sun. No one would have known there was a sun except for the psalmist. Like, No, I'm taking a drink. That was stupid. Wonder if there's paths in the sea. Yeah, there are. We've known about it for millennia. I mean, look at the.
I mean, you knew about it when you were a little baby dinosaur, right?
Obviously. Although the currents have changed a lot since then. But also look at Pacific Islanders. They would not have been able to island hop like that if they didn't know about currents at least a little bit. These are people who would take thousands of miles of journey in a tiny canoe with like some livestock and some saved up grain, living off their own fat reserves. Also, $2 from Cattlehorn, who sends a couple of Godzilla emojis, so we'll take a drink for that. Thank you very much, Cattlehorn. It's really appreciated. Yeah. So, Investor Freya says the purpose of mosquitoes was decided in Lilo and Stitch. Was it to be the next great target for extinction by humanity, who should stop killing macrofauna or megafauna and start killing mosquitoes? Because mosquitoes are technically macrofauna. Oh, there's Mothra. Also, Lane Fox Giant Boobs says songs literally say that slugs melt. I am not familiar with that song, but I mean, if you put enough salt on them, they kind of shrivel up and gross stuff oozes out.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But yeah, I'm just tired of people taking like some ancient text and being like, how could they have known this widely known phenomenon was a phenomenon that was widely known? It's like some people talk about like the Quran says that after you're burned in hell, God will form new skin for you so you can feel the flames again. And it's like, how could they have known that after your skin is burned off, you lose feeling? It's like, I don't know, probably because some people back then got third-degree burns and they stopped reporting pain after the skin sloughed off before they died.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all it would take, is a burn victim.
Third-degree burn, somewhere.
Or is it first degree?
Here.
Is it first-degree burn I'm thinking of? I always get the order mixed up.
I had a third-degree burn. I touched a high-temperature steel.
Oh, wow.
What is that, 500 degrees?
Show us where it is again, because
I don't know. There's no scar, but I barely... It was like somewhere right up in here. I was cleaning.
And it charred your flesh?
And I was like,
Is it the first degree burn that's the one where it's all black? I always get the order mixed up.
The third degree is the worst of the three.
I feel like you didn't get a third degree burn then.
No, I did, because it hurt for a split second, and then it didn't hurt at all. I couldn't feel anything. And then I touched it, and then the skin came off with my other finger. And I was like,
Ew.
Oh, that hurts now.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, burn victims, that's all you need to know that. And it's the same thing with this in the Bible. It's like, this is not interesting. But although I'm going to go ahead and take a guess and say that I think Kent might actually say it's something other than the currents that people were using for millennia.
They could save an awful lot of time. Instead of taking the short route across the middle, follow the current. It's longer, but you get there faster. It's like having a tailwind the whole time. He got that from the Bible.
No.
The Bible says the life of the flesh is in the blood. People read that and say, wow. Up until, a lot of people used to take their blood out to help them get well. Clear up until 1860, they did bloodletting.
Yeah, I'm sure that no one until the Bible noticed that if you bled a creature dry, it would die. I'm taking a drink. Like, is he aware that common ancient slaughter methods relied on basically the blood rapidly leaving the organism? Like most, kill cuts in slaughtering techniques involve puncturing major arteries so that the blood drains as fast as possible so the animal dies quickly. Like, there's a reason for this. It's because everyone knew that once all the blood was gone, the creature wasn't coming back. This isn't rocket science. This is easily things that have been known for a very long time. Like, even back when humans were just hunter-gatherers, humans were really well adapted for long-term overland travel. One of the reasons for that is that early hunting techniques often involved, death by 1,000 cuts, where you stick a whole bunch of spears into an animal. You're probably not getting any vital organs, but you're opening up enough wounds that it will bleed to death. And humans would have noticed that since before the invention of writing, that if you bled a creature enough, it would die. Like, this is some of the most basic human knowledge that has ever existed. Like, this is completely unremarkable. And I do not get why it means that we should take our science from the Bible, which, by the way, also says if you want stripy cows, have them drink in front of stripy sticks. And then looking at the stripy sticks will make them have stripy babies.
Have you tried it though?
Not me myself, but I'll tell you what.
Maybe.
If anyone wants to fund me for this experiment, I will be happy to buy, a couple dozen head of cattle and feed them in front of stripy sticks and see if that increases the frequency of stripes.
And you have to buy me a camera so I can film the cows.
Yeah, there you go. So there's a goal. Fundraising goal for the chat there.
So whatever that, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever, add $15 more dollars for some for masks. Too.
So once we get that in chat money, we'll buy a bunch of cattle.
And the Bible says the life of the flesh is in the blood. You can study there's a good book called Men of Science, Men of God, published by ICR, carries it. I don't know if they publish it, but you can get icr.org and get it from them. A great book. Men of Science, Men of God, showing a lot of the godly scientists of the past. You ever heard of an MRI machine?
Oh, here we go.
Magnetic resonance imaging.
Canadian.
The guy who invented that is a creationist.
One of the guys who was a bit helpful in the invention of that got it. He was not the only inventor, nor was he even the primary inventor. But he did help, and yes, he was a young Earth, or is, I think he's still alive, is a young Earth creationist. And it's like I've said before, I said it last time, young Earth creationists can do good science. They can't do good creationist science because that's impossible. And figuring out how magnetic resonance is going to interact with the body and how you can sense that doesn't have anything to do with creationism. So, yeah, of course you can do that. No one has ever said that because you're a creationist you can't do good science. It's just that whenever it ends up being explicitly creationist, it also ends up being bad science because, spoiler alerts, creationism isn't true.
Loves God, believes the Bible. Is he a scientist? Oh, yeah.
No, he's at least an engineer.
But see, to the average evolutionist, that guy would not qualify as a scientist because he believes in creation.
No, that's not why. It's just because...
So if they define the terms...
Sorry, it's just because I don't think he's actually a scientist, but he seems like a pretty good engineer.
He's not publishing...
I mean, as far as I know, he's not. That also might not be true. Maybe he is publishing stuff in, like, electromagnetics papers or something. And if he is, then he's a scientist. And, I mean, I have no fault for him in that. Like, what was it? Henry Morris. He was I think it was Henry Morris. It might have been Dwayne Gage, but I'm pretty sure it was Morris. Who were some of the old guard of young Earth creationism. He was a scientist. He published in a lot of hydrology journals. He did a lot of work on hydrology. And he came up with a lot of new techniques for engineering hydrological systems, and he published a well-regarded book on hydrology and hydrodynamics. He was a scientist. He also did wacky, crazy young Earth creationist stuff that made no sense and that no one in the scientific community took seriously. Doesn't make him not a scientist. So, I mean, it's really that simple. You can have crazy off-the-wall beliefs in one area and do good science in another. It's just if you have crazy off-the-wall beliefs in the area that you're trying to do science, no one's going to take it seriously, and you're not a scientist because you aren't doing good work. I mean, that's it. Like, you can be a scientist who's, like a geocentrist. That's fine, as long as you're, like, a geologist, and it doesn't really matter to your geological work. It's weird, but, like, whatever.
Who's a scientist, of course, they will win the argument. That's how they do it. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to define the terms. And you got to watch for that constantly. According to the creationist, 6,000 years ago, God did it. According to the evolutionist, 20 billion years ago, it just happened by itself. Now, these two timelines are not the same scale.
Obviously.
On the top timeline here, every inch is 150 years, which is a long time. Abe Lincoln was not even president 1 inch ago. Columbus was running around trying to find this place right there. Vikings were going around beating up on everybody right there, right? If I was to try to show you what 20 billion years looks like at this scale, this chart would actually need to be 2,100 miles long.
I'm not going to do the math, but that sounds about right, so I'm going to
From Pensacola to Portland, Oregon. 6,000 years does not even show up on that chart. I cannot draw a line thin enough to represent 6,000 years.
That's also probably true. I'll take a drink for that too.
So they're hiding behind long ago and far away.
No one's hiding.
And somehow the brain can't accept that. The brain shuts off and says, wow, it must be true.
His conclusion made no sense. What the heck?
Yeah.
Kent?
The fact that you are wrong by quite a few orders of magnitude, Kent, doesn't mean that other people are hiding. It just means that your level of error is literally astronomical. I mean, he's
one timeline short compared to the other one.
He's off.
Therefore, the long one must be crazy.
Right. So this order of magnitude is from 1,000 to a billion, which is basically to say it's 1,000-fold off. So it would be like estimating, like, let's say you say that someone is 2 meters tall, right? And instead you say they're 2 millimeters tall. That's your estimate. That's the kind of error that we're talking about here. It's actually a little bit more than that. It would be like actually more like saying they're like 1.6 or 1.4 millimeters, but still.
Figure.
It's literally astronomical. It's like saying that the distance to the moon is like, 20 feet. It just doesn't work.
I don't know. I feel like it's just out of my reach.
Yeah.
Actually, the moon's gonna be...
If you say so. I barely remember the orientation of your place, man.
Yeah, well, I remember.
I do remember hanging out by your fire and finding Jupiter.
Well, that was over there.
I remember.
And now, yes, so that's where the moon will be rising.
Fair enough.
In a couple hours.
All right. Get some more Kent in.
And if you tell a big lie, they're more likely to believe it. And that's exactly what's happened. Now, the basic questions that you need to ask are, where did the matter come from?
From the energy of the initial Big Bang.
The laws come from?
They are properties of the universe. They're not written laws. They're things that we have discovered and described, and then called laws retroactively.
And where did the energy come from?
I don't know.
I ask that to evolutionists all the time. Okay, you say there was a Big Bang. Please help me now.
I wonder if he ever listens to the answers. What do you think? No?
Of course. Dude, what?
I mean, I debated him. I know. He doesn't listen.
If I had never heard of him, ever, and the only exposure I had to Kent Hovind was in your debate with him, I would already be able to say it's like, I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know what he's talking about. Okay, that's a good answer. Well, that's a good answer for that. Wait, no, that was stupid.
Yeah, and off topic.
He already said that, and he already explained. This guy is a fraud. That's all it takes. That's all it takes.
Yep.
Just pay attention, use like reason and logic, and see who just contradicts themselves and who doesn't.
Yep. I think that debate, his Bill Ludlow debate, like his King Crocodile debate, those are some of the debates where it doesn't matter that much if you know what the other side is talking about. You can see how incapable Kent Hovind is of interacting on topic about essentially anything. And yeah, so those are some of my absolute favorite. And I mean, look, there's a whole bunch of other great ones, like the one that RJ Downer did, and there's a lot of great Kent Hovind versus some other guy debates. But I think those three, and also probably the R and Raw debate, make it extremely clear that Kent Hovind is incapable of engaging with someone who knows what they're talking about in essentially any field. He's even really bad at the Bible in many cases.
Honestly, if you're talking about and you're confident enough to deal with that rhetoric, you could. It doesn't take. I mean, do your homework and then beat the guy in a debate.
Yeah.
So.
Just about anyone can school Kent Hovind as long as they actually do their homework. And they know his rhetorical tricks and don't let him,
I won't do it because I am unwilling to do the homework. And I don't think in that context, because of how much I looked up to him when I was a kid, I don't think I could have that.
See, that's the thing. I used to look up to him.
Nervous, and I would just not.
I used to look up to him is one of the reasons why I feel like I wanted to do it. Because I was like, you know what?
Yeah, but that's your personality, and mine isn't like that.
I mean, that's fair. Look, that's perfectly fair. And I'm not pushing you to go debate Kent Hovind. You do what you want.
No, I know that.
Okay.
And if I did do my homework, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
The truth would win. So I'd pick something where he's wrong and I'd be right on.
We'll keep going a little bit.
Where did the matter come from? What exploded?
It wasn't an explosion, so that's the problem solved there.
They don't know, of course. Secondly, where did the laws come from? Notice the universe is run by laws. The law of gravity, for instance. Why do objects attract each other?
Because they curve local space-time inward, and that affects the local geodesic, which then causes objects to be attracted to each other. I mean, like, we have an answer to that. What?
Yeah, they're just moving on a straight line. It's space-time that's curving.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't... technically, it's not rocket science, but it is still pretty... It's fairly advanced physics, but, like, it's not
Kent
unknown.
Hovind, watch a bunch of PBS space-time. Watch it.
That was
done with it, just keep watching over and over and absorb as much as you can.
That was a big part of you going out of the young Earth part of creationism, wasn't it?
A huge part of it.
Yeah. But you were still broadly like iffy on evolution because they don't really touch on that, right?
They don't talk about that much. My views on evolution changed a lot more slowly.
Yeah.
I technically don't even know exactly what they are right now.
That's okay.
I don't disagree with any evidence that I know of with evolution. So I'm not sure. I'm still not really sure what's real and what's like Kent Hovind and other people I had drilling into my brain when I was younger.
We'll have to give you an intensive crash course on evolution sometime.
Well, no, it has to be slow and steady because, like, even the idea of cladistics, I had to have it explained to me so many times before I felt like I understood it.
Fair enough.
I still can't describe what it is in like 1 or 2 sentences. I
Okay.
still don't have that capability.
Well, we will eventually run out of interesting Kent Hovind material. It'll take a while. But we could actually then switch to like let's teach evolutionary biology, and we could start very basic and just do that as a live thing where people can ask questions, and you're here to ask questions live for more immediate sort of feedback. So maybe that's something we could do after Kent with Bent kind of runs out of steam.
Yeah, maybe.
How does the Earth know my pen is here?
It does.
Oh, yes, and Atheist Junior says, cool thumbnail. That is because Atheist Junior is actually the one who made that for me. And it was awesome. And so you have him to thank for the Kentwork orange. I did not do anything. It was like one less thing I had to do this week, which is great considering how this week has already gone. Which is to say,
It's been bad.
yeah, it's been a kind of a crazy week, and we'll.
And this day, bananas, but that's from a song.
Yes, actually, this day has been bananas for me and several other people that I know. So. As was yesterday, although I didn't know exactly how bananas it had been until today.
If I drop it, how long will it take the Earth to figure out where it is and start pulling on it? Instantly, right? How did it know that?
No, it's the speed of light, actually.
Well, it takes the speed of light for the local geodesic to change as the Earth changes, but the local geodesic at that ball is already curved towards the Earth.
I suppose.
So it's kind of like how you look at it. You could say instantly, but like there is going to be some delay between where the Earth is and where the ball is.
There's a change when he lets go of the pen.
Yeah.
It's just so subtle for the Earth, but it does exist.
It's probably instantaneous in terms of like our ability to measure it, but there is probably some kind of a delay depending on how the whatever. Yeah, it's complicated.
Okay, so how does the Earth know? It doesn't know, Kent.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It's just that it's warping local spacetime. And so is the ball, just to a much, much, much lesser degree. So, yeah.
And so is your mom to a moderate degree.
Oh.
I don't know whose mom. There's 24 people watching. Could be anyone's.
All of them.
If I was somehow able to create something instantly from nothing, in the middle of the air, 100 miles above the Earth, how long would it take to begin falling? Where did this... What is gravity, anyway?
The local curvature of space-time caused by mass.
Give me a jar of it, would you please?
You when I was 10. What is gravity, anyway?
I'm just taking...
Like, don't worry about it.
I mean, when you're 10, that's a fair answer, but like I'm taking a drink because it's like, this is a well-known thing. This is not something that we're wondering about anymore.
Well, but Kent is, and that's why I made that comment.
I know. It's crazy. And he's like, oh, I love science. It's like, well, you could learn a little bit of it. That's a thing you could do. Just a little. And it's not like Einstein is going to, like, break his entire worldview. I guess the speed of light thing might a little bit, but, like...
It would.
Oh, hey, we got a doggo on the Dapper Dino blanket.
Uh-oh. Oh. Please don't use that as a toilet.
Yes, I agree with that.
This is my relatively new dog, Carmen San Diego.
I think she's just having...
for my mother when she flew back to Wisconsin permanently.
Or so we think. Because you thought her flying down to Arizona was permanent too.
Yeah, it was, but
well,
she was here for several years, though.
That's fair.
2.5 years, so.
Okay.
Nobody has a clue what it is. We use it all the time, obviously, or you'd be sitting on the ceiling or something. But
no,
nobody.
No, Kent. I'm taking a drink. The fact that we know about what gravity is not the reason you wouldn't be sitting on the ceiling. People weren't sitting on the ceiling before Isaac Newton.
This is talking about like when the cartoon runs off the cliff and he doesn't fall.
That's not what happens.
Gives him a book on gravity. That's what Kent thinks happens, though.
That's the thing.
Kent's brain is like a cartoon.
The law of gravity, the most basic version of the law of universal gravitation, was developed by Sir Isaac Newton. But before that, it's not like gravity wasn't working. We don't need to have the scientific law in order for the universe to have the properties it does. The universe has the properties it does regardless of what we say about it. And if we get a law wrong, the universe still continues to operate in whatever way we don't know about. Which, in fact, has happened, because the law of universal gravitation...
It's happening now.
Right, yeah. So when Newton derived his initial, relatively simple law, that, the force of gravity was equal to the sum of the two masses times the gravitational constant over the square of the distance. That's a pretty simple algebraic equation. It doesn't involve any square roots or really gigantic numbers necessarily. Nice and basic. But then Einstein came along and said, hey, this becomes increasingly inaccurate at higher and higher velocities. And here's a correction. And then it involves doing things like, adding the square root of the speed of light into the denominator and adding another factor in and all these things. And it's a much more complicated equation. I've used it. It's kind of a pain in the butt. Right? Because for some reason, as an elective, I took a course in quantum mechanics and relativity in high school. Because it's the kind of guy I am.
I wish my school would have offered that.
Well, it only offered it like 2 years, and I
probably wouldn't have taken it, and I would have regretted it.
Well, but yeah, so, I've used the equation to calculate things like time dilations and, speed needed to add in a certain amount of velocity at a certain relativistically relevant speed and stuff like this. Like, that's a thing I've done. It's a pain in the butt equation, and if all you're doing is, like, building a skyscraper or something, you don't need it. Newton's going to work just fine.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, we got that law slightly wrong. Newton's law is ever so slightly inaccurate at all speeds, but at most speeds that are relevant to humans, the inaccuracy is well under the level that you could ever measure, so it essentially doesn't matter. But if you're going to say, send a rocket to Alpha Centauri, it's going to matter a lot, unless you are okay with taking thousands of years to get there. So, yeah, the laws do not depend on humans getting them right.
Knows what it is, and we still don't know why do we have this interesting force called gravity, or inertia, or centrifugal force. There are hundreds of forces in the universe. Where did they come from?
Centrifugal force is just an outplay of, inertia in a rotating frame of reference. But here's the other thing.
He's just listing things that he doesn't understand. That's all.
It's true. But here's the other thing, right? Let's say we didn't know any of these things. Anything. That doesn't mean that Kent's interpretation of the Bible is right. That science hasn't answered a question doesn't mean, therefore, young Earth creationism. That's not how it works.
Well, and that Kent doesn't know the answer to the question doesn't mean
right, but I'm
smarter people.
Right, but I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt, right? Like,
and that they exist whether or not humans know about them.
But like, let's say we went back in time to like the 1500s. No one knew about gravity or electromagnetism Well, they kind of knew about magnetism, but they didn't know like about electricity, and they didn't know about evolution, all these things. That doesn't make them not true, and it doesn't mean that there aren't natural explanations for these things. They just didn't know. Pointing out, whether rightly or wrongly, that science might not know a thing doesn't strengthen his case at all. Not even a little bit.
Who made them?
It's not clear that anyone had to have made them, although even if we say that, you know, a god made them, that doesn't negate what we know about evolution or the age of the universe.
And why are they so precise?
Sorry, what's that?
I'm a red whale. Andrew Cummings says, no, there are only 4 forces, and one of them isn't really a force. And then I'm a red whale says water, earth, fire, and air.
Nice.
That's great.
I like that. Well, actually, so I'm still not convinced that the theory of quantum gravity is going to result with gravity coming out as an actual force. I'm not convinced that when we finally figure that out, maybe it will come out. Maybe the graviton is real. I don't know.
I speculate it is not real.
Okay.
Obviously I have no idea, but
Right.
I really like the idea of the curvature of space-time, and there is no gravitron.
But then what communicates the curvature through space-time? Couldn't that be the graviton?
I don't think it's necessary, but
Okay.
obviously I have no understanding of not really.
Well, I mean, to be fair, most scientists have no understanding of quantum gravity because it's very hard to figure out. It's one of the biggest unanswered questions in physics, is how does gravity work at the quantum scale? Like, no one has an idea. That's not to say that your guess is just as good as anyone else's, because...
It's definitely way worse.
Yeah.
Ice.
But I bet Kent has an idea.
No.
Thirdly, where did all this energy come from?
I don't know.
Energy and matter are sort of interchangeable, but anytime you change from one to the other, you have a tremendous loss. So basically, where did the matter...
What do you mean, a loss? A loss of what, Kent? What is lost when energy is converted to matter, or matter is converted to energy? I really want to know. Like, does energy just evaporate into nothing? Because, I mean, you're the whole big one who's like, the first law of thermodynamics precludes evolution, or the Big Bang, or something. And now he's just saying that apparently matter or energy can just disappear. Bye.
Apparently, gravitron makes certain things that I want to buy. Nothing. Let's go.
Okay.
Where did the energy came from is sort of two sides of the same coin. But these are things the evolutionist simply doesn't know. I use the merry-go-round illustration in my seminar because it illustrates something called the law of conservation of angular momentum. If you put kids on the merry-go-round and get it spinning, as it goes faster and faster and faster, eventually, of course, the kids are going to go flying off the merry-go-round. Now, when the kid flies off, if the merry-go-round is going clockwise, the kid will be spinning clockwise as he exits. The reason for this is, if you can imagine the circle spinning, the outside has to move faster than the inside. It's got further to go in the same amount of time.
It's not an entirely accurate description of the conservation of angular momentum, but okay.
And because of that, if it cracks up in a frictionless environment, now that's key, okay? This would only work in a frictionless environment. And that's what the Big Bang Theory says. All the matter was in one dot. Well, if all the matter is in one dot, then you have a totally frictionless environment. There's nothing for it to hit on the way out.
It's mostly true-ish. I'll take kind of a drink. Yeah. Okay.
So and they said it was spinning, and it exploded. Well, then, all of the fragments should be spinning the same way. But yet, they're not. Venus and Uranus, and possibly Pluto, they're not quite sure yet. Last I heard, they don't know for sure which way Pluto spins, but they think it may be spinning backwards.
Okay, so we're getting stupid and right drinks. So I'm going to drink once for getting Venus is rotating backwards. Uranus is not actually rotating backwards. It's rotating almost exactly on its side, but it is actually still ever so slightly prograde, so that's dumb. And also, the solar system. So here he's conflating the nebular hypothesis and the Big Bang again, which, yeah. How was that potato?
It's pretty good.
All right, good. I don't know if you guys were here last time, but I was saying that Kent Hovind is going to conflate those two, and Bent was saying that he wasn't. And we decided the winner would have, the loser of this bet would have to eat a potato. And there's you eating that potato.
It was good, dude.
Good. Potatoes are delicious, man.
Like,
there you go. And he definitely conflates the two. He has no idea that they're not completely different, but they're very separate ideas. So the nebula hypothesis is about a cloud of gas collapsing into the solar system, right? And so, as that happens, things start to spin in a particular direction, which is going to be the same as the overall spin of the sun, right? Okay, so how does something start spinning the other way? Well, we'll actually just use Kent Hovind's own illustration, right? So let's say you spun up a merry-go-round, and we're going to sort of ignore the implication of serious injury and possible death to people on the merry-go-round.
You know how Ken feels about kids.
Yeah, well. So anyway, so the kids fly off of this merry-go-round, and let's say that it was rotating clockwise. Well, they will continue to rotate clockwise. But let's say one of them clips a tree with his leg as he's spinning. He may well end up spinning slowly the other way. You know what Venus does? It spins slowly the other way. It's almost like
spinning around and colliding every once in a while. Maybe
something
collide, and maybe one thing's moving a little bit differently.
Yeah. So what the current hypothesis is simply that sometimes things collide, and when you collide with something, sometimes you end up vastly changing your rotation. And the only thing that's required is that other parts of the system gain the same amount of momentum that you lost. So the overall momentum of the system stays the same, but you can have something get essentially a negative amount of angular momentum as measured, from the if prograde around the sun is positive and rotational energy, then retrograde would be negative. So if the rotational energy of Venus goes to a slightly negative number, as long as rotational energy of other things goes up by the same amount, you're good. That's all it takes. It's literally it. The nebular hypothesis does not require that everything always rotate prograde forever. Collisions can alter this dramatically. And as we know, collisions happen in space.
To the other 6. Here we have 6 planets spinning one way, 2 and possibly 3 spinning the other way.
Okay.
And it's not just 2 planets together. Venus and Uranus have several planets in between. So why do 2 planets spin backwards?
Well, again, only one of them.
One atheist I debated said, well, maybe something hit Venus and spun it around backwards. I said, well, I suppose that's possible, but think about it for a minute. Do you realize what it would take to reverse the spin of a planet?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing, right? At the point we're talking about, the planets were, 1, smaller, so it doesn't take actually as much. And 2, there were a whole bunch of sort of mini planets floating around the inner solar system. That's one of the ways that it's one of the ways it's very likely that we got the moon, is a sort of Mars-sized planet collided with Earth, but not in a way that, reversed its spin. But if a similar thing had happened to Venus, with the thing coming in from the other angle, so it does reverse the spin, it would be very unsurprising. And this is the kind of high energy, and by high I mean really high energy impacts that were occurring frequently during the early heavy bombardment of the solar system. This is not a mysterious thing. We know that these things happened. So I'm just going to take a drink. Kent saying, how could that happen? You know how big that would have to be? Yeah, we do. We've calculated that, Kent.
Don't you think it would leave a dent at least?
No, it would have liquefied Venus, and then Venus would have reformed as a ball. We also know that, and so I'm going to take another drink because that's also stupid. So we know roughly the physical properties of planets in these types of high energy impacts, and essentially, even solid rock, even under a low impact, just regular old asteroid size, a few feet across, we know that rocks, like the silicates that form up the crusts of the inner planets, they essentially act like liquids. And at that kind of scale, you're essentially going to reliquefy whatever crust was already there. And, oh, look, you know what hydrostatic equilibrium is on the scale of a planet? A sphere. So no, it's not going to leave a dent. Plus, we also know that Venus has recently resurfaced itself. And by recently, I mean on a geological time frame. The surface of Venus is extremely young. And then Vantalia 1998 says, at Dapper Dino, were you there? You know what? Yes.
Well, how old is the surface of Venus? Is it less than 150 million years?
You know what? That's a good question. I don't actually know. I think it's somewhere around that ballpark.
You may have been there then.
But I'm going to find out, you know what? Because that's a good question.
Well, how old did the surface of Venus look when you looked at it?
Well, I didn't have telescopes back then.
Yeah, but come on, man, you can see it in the sky.
But then I just would have seen the sky, the clouds.
Yeah, but at night.
I still would have just seen clouds. Okay, so 600 million years is the age of the crust of Venus, which is still a lot younger than, you know, the 4.5 billion years that, you know, Venus has been around.
Right.
So, and we don't know how often it resurfaces. So it might be that Venus is poised to resurface tomorrow. We could see, you know, gigantic volcanic eruptions tomorrow. We don't know. Because how would you check? You had to know how old the previous surface was. How are we going to do that? You know, drill a core out of Venus? Because Venus surface missions have a lifetime measured in, like, minutes. So. Yeah. How did Dapper Dino survive the KT extinction? I would tell you, but I would have to kill you. And that is the movie cliche of the night.
To everyone else
in
that extinction.
Yeah. It was me. I killed the dinosaurs.
You had to cover up a bunch of evidence. There are a lot of witnesses.
It's true.
Where is the dent? Why is Venus nearly perfectly round and in a nearly perfectly circular orbit?
Gravity.
Just covered it, but what's the orbital eccentricity of Venus? So I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's higher than Earth's.
I don't know what it is. I don't really care what it is. I don't care how circular it is.
I want to know.
All right, I'll look it up for you.
It's 0.97.
You looked it up for you.
And let's look it up for Earth. And of Earth, let's see. Oh, let's see. Oh, Venus has a 0.007, which is comparatively small. Okay, what's the orbital eccentricity of Earth? 0.0. Oh, so it is actually more circular than Earth's orbit. Oh, that's fair enough. That's actually a good question. I don't know the answer. I would be curious to know, but there you go. Although I'll also say that unless this collision significantly added large amounts of energy at aphelion or perihelion, there's probably not a good reason to think it would dramatically increase the eccentricity of Venus's orbit because of, you know, orbital mechanics. But hey, what does Kent know about orbital mechanics? You know what? I want to see Kent Hovind play Kerbal Space Program to see what he knows. To see what he knows about that. Yeah. I would too. Okay, Kent, let's see how much you know about orbital mechanics. Here you go. Rocket time. We'll let him play it. We'll let him play a sandbox mode, so he has everything he needs.
I mean, he give him a rocket that's already built too.
Yeah, I'll let him start with one of the most well-engineered.
Tutorial on how the game works a little bit. See.
Yeah, I'll tell him what the controls are. Like, you know, this is, you know, pitch, roll, yaw. This is throttle up, throttle down, space. But yeah, I would seriously like to see how Kent Hovind would go about establishing like an orbit around Kerbin, and then do like a transfer orbit to Duna. I want to see Kent Hovind do that, because I don't have any faith.
I'm gonna point right at it. I mean,
I don't have any faith in his ability to get a transfer orbit for interplanetary travels in Kerbal Space Program, which is like the dumbed down version of NASA. So yeah, I would love to see that, because I don't think Kent Hovind knows enough about orbital mechanics to say these things. Is that pitch roll? Yeah, it's a pitch roll. It's a new kind of sushi.
Yum.
Imagine a planet spinning and at the same time going around the sun. I want you to strike it so that it simply reverses the spin without knocking it into an elliptical orbit or knocking it out of orbit.
Okay.
Chances of that is 0. That ain't gonna happen.
Okay, how about this? Let's say we start out in a eccentric orbit, and then I strike it retrograde while it's at perihelion. That drops the aphelion down, and if I do it just right, I might actually get it closer to circularization.
What if you do it too much and then something else hits it the other way, and then eventually it reaches?
I mean, yeah, there's a whole bunch of things. The other thing is eccentricity is
There's
actually
a lot more than one collision. There's literally probably, I don't know, billions or trillions. I mean, who knows how many?
Well, and the other thing is, over time, interactions between other bodies in the solar system, especially Earth, is actually going to tend to decrease the eccentricity or increase the circularity of an orbit of anything lower into the system, because either it's going to eject something like Venus out, that is gravitational interactions with Earth, or it will stabilize the orbit. And after 4.5 billion years, the only orbits that are going to remain are going to be fairly stable ones, which tend to be relatively circular. So there's also that, is it could have been eccentric at the beginning, and then evened out over time as it interacted gravitationally, primarily with Earth, but also to some degree Mercury. We'll go back to Kent. But again, what does Kent know about things like the three-body problem?
Then not only do we have that problem, we have at least 6 of the 63 moons. I think there are more moons now that have been discovered. But at this time, in 1989, they knew about 63 moons. 6 of them are spinning backwards. Some of them
Are they spinning or are they orbiting backwards? But again, same deal.
actually travel backwards around their planet. I believe, I'd have to look it up, but 2 planets, Saturn and Neptune, there it is right there, have moons orbiting both directions.
Okay. Hey. You know what? Oh, and Brainbud says, finally someone that's not discussing that thing. Thank you, Dapper Dino. Oh, you're welcome. You are very welcome, because, yeah, I know, that's what everyone's doing. This is counter-programming. So here's the thing, right? Again, if you want to understand these things relatively well, like, not expert level, but, like, so that you can get sort of a grasp on this from an almost intuitive level, get reasonably good at Kerbal Space Program. Because if you play Kerbal Space Program a lot, one of the things you realize is that if you're coming in to the, the sort of this sphere of influence, if you will, of a gas giant, one of the easiest ways to capture into orbit is to actually have a gravitational interaction with one of its moons. So, for instance, there's a gas giant in Kerbal Space Program. It's called Joule, and it has this very large moon called Tylo.
Very large.
And if you can get an interaction as you're coming in towards Joule around Tylo, you can establish an orbit. But depending on which direction you encounter Tylo will depend on whether or not your orbit around Joule is backwards to the moons or not. The same thing can happen with just big old rocks. If they enter the gravitational influence of Jupiter or Saturn closely enough, and then they have an interaction with a moon where they actually approach the moon as the moon is traveling towards them, they may well establish a retrograde orbit. Whereas if they approach it a little bit fast and still, end up swinging around it and losing energy, they might establish... Oh, drink from Mothra. All right, have a good night, Andrew. They may establish a prograde orbit, right? It all just has to do with exactly how the interaction goes and how much energy is taken out of your, it's a hyperbolic orbit, but how much energy is taken out of that. And if it's more than the energy contained in your hyperbolic orbit, you may end up retrograde. Unless your, approach is already retrograde, in which case you'll end up prograde. So when you do a gravitational capture, unless you're intending for a particular orbit, which kind you get is essentially random. So it's not surprising that if an object gets captured as a moon by a gas giant, that a good number of them will just be retrograde. Now, we'll still expect a slight majority to be prograde, or even a significant majority, because many of the moons probably formed in situ as an accretion disk around the planet itself, in which case we would expect them to have prograde orbits. But subsequent capture, which explains many of the smaller moons, has essentially a 50-50 chance of ending up retrograde or prograde. That's really all there is to it. It's very, very basic orbital mechanics, but the problem is that orbital mechanics is not something you learn in school, and so very few people will have even the slightest grasp. Yeah. And the only reason...
Like video games and learning.
Right.
It's a great one.
Get Kerbal Space Program.
One of the best.
Yes, it is excellent. Although at this point, I feel like both of us have sort of done most of the things we ever wanted to do in it. So it's...
I tried playing it the other day, and it's like...
I've done all of this.
I've thought over 1,000 hours in it. I don't remember, but
That's one of the things I'm looking for Kerbal Space Program 2, where there's going to be like actual colonization stuff and space colonies and surface colonies and super advanced propulsion methods and whatnot. That'll be cool. So, anyway.
Here you got a planet. Some of the moons are going this way. Other moons are going this way.
Yeah, we covered it.
Now, as these moons pass each other, there's going to be a slight gravitational tug.
Mm-hmm.
How long can a system like that last before it slowly disintegrates? They drift off into space.
I will answer that question, and then I think that'll probably be it for us for now. We'll probably go offline. Like I said, we're going to do a little bit, going to cut it off a little bit early today. So, the thing that really matters is orbital resonances, right? So, there are a lot of orbital resonances. You can actually see them really, really well in Jupiter, but you can also see them in the planets, right? Orbits tend to come in like, 2 to 1 or 2 to 3 orbital resonances. And that's because these are stabilizing resonances. Whether or not you're going retrograde to prograde in the interaction, these kinds of resonance orbits remain stable almost indefinitely. Like, and eventually there will be some interaction with like an outside body or something like that may change this and eject some body. But over a long time, the only orbits that stick around are resonance orbits, which are inherently stable, or orbits that are so far away from each other that the gravitational interactions are minimal. So like the orbit of Pluto is essentially unaffected by anything but Uranus. It gets actually stabilized slightly by Uranus, but other than that, like Earth's orbit isn't going to do a darn thing to Pluto. So essentially, these gravitational interactions do one of two things. They either destabilize or stabilize the orbit. When they stabilize the orbit, it actually creates resonance orbits. And when it destabilizes it, it ejects it from the system, so we just never see it. And someone asked me about, what about Tylosaurus, the mosasaur? It's cool. I like Mosasaurus.
It's got Tylo in it.
Oh, there we go. Okay, got it. Yeah. Got it. But Tylosaurus is a real animal. It's a mosasaur. So, yeah, that's the reason for this. This is actually, again, a well-understood aspect of orbital mechanics and, how gravity works. I mean, this is basically like Kent saying, how come gravity? And it's just like, I don't know what to tell you, Kent. I mean, this is a standard expected outcome of gravitational interactions. It's just like...
I don't understand gravity, so therefore 6,000 years.
Yep, that's basically the argument here. So, okay, let's see. What do I want to say as end stuff? Okay, so this Thursday, there's going to be a sort of spiritual successor to the video that I had last Thursday talking about academic fraud. Because a certain creationist had a certain other creationist on to talk about things that I know the first guy knows better about. And didn't bother to correct him. So I'm going to correct him for him and call him out for his hypocrisy at every single step of the way, because I know that the host of this little interview knows better. And yeah, this is probably the meanest I've ever been, because I have lost all patience with this particular individual. I'm just done. I've given this person the benefit of the doubt for a very long time, and it has been it's thrown back in my face for almost a year now, and that's it. I've had it. I'm done playing nice with this particular person. You will see who it is on Thursday, or whenever I schedule the premiere, because then you'll see it on the thumbnail. Then this Saturday, I am hoping to have my game review video out. So in this video, I review 2 games by Genius Games. They are Math Rush and Ecosystem. I also have 2 more games that I will be reviewing from them, which is Cytosis and Nerd Word Science. Yep. So those will be hopefully the Saturday after. So there you go. They were sent. This is my full disclosure. I am not being paid for these reviews. However, I did receive review copies of the games for free. So the degree to which you think that will bias my opinion, I mean, then take my interview or my review with a grain of salt. But there you go. Mouth guard comes off. Sorry, that was from the chat.
What if he hates all the games?
But then I'll tell them. I'll tell you that I hate all the games. So far,
Stay tuned. Find out.
So far, I do not hate all the games.
Great.
So I would say that of the two that I'm going to be reviewing, well, that you're going to see the review of on Saturday, I do have a preference as to which one I would rather play, like hanging out with friends, doing board games. But I also have very nice things to say about the other one, as well as criticisms on both games. So, it is not going to simply be me being, super enthusiastic about both games. There's one, I have a clear preference for one of them, and I have criticisms for both. So, let's see. Top Hats Off, again on Saturday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are going to be continuing the episode that we started last week of the Star Trek Adventures Klingon Empire game. Starring not just me, but also Bent Hovind, as well as quite a few other people.
Borak Hord.
Yeah, that's his character's name. It means Captain Borath.
Yeah.
So we will be continuing that. They have found out that there is a chronoton field emanating from the 10th planet in the system, causing everyone on the 7th planet to age prematurely, which is bad.
Ever to figure that out.
Yeah.
It took so long.
And there were Romulans, but apparently they're not the ones causing it, or at least not as far as the Romulans they found knew.
I don't trust him, but hey.
Well,
we'll see.
So anyway, so there's that, and then Bent. What do you got?
Nothing else new from Copper Magma. That's all I have for now.
But still, if you haven't, check out coppermagma.com.
Just Copper Magma and music, and everyone just kind of relax and listen to some music, maybe.
I'm a red whale, says Academic Fraud 2 Electric Boogaloo. It's not what I called it, but basically. Yeah. As Vestafray says, Dapper Dino is shilling for big game. Yeah, it's true. Big board games. Which actually, Genius Games is not a big... I mean, they're not like... They're no like Hasbro. But... So far, yeah, I enjoyed both of those games. Although, like I said, there's one that I clearly enjoyed more. So I will talk to all you guys later. Hope you guys stay safe out there. And, yeah, there you go. That's it. That's all we got. Hit the end screen.
Bye. Stay classy.
Thanks for watching. But before you go, I'd like to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Bent Hovind, Ian Chen, Sphincter of Doom, Chris Love, Henry Hutanen, and Bob Knob. Their support helps make this channel possible, because as you may know, YouTube is a very volatile platform, and they give this channel much needed additional stability. If you'd like to join the team, a link to my Patreon page can be found in the description, and you can join with the button right below this video on YouTube. Both groups of people get access to my special patron and member-only Discord channel,
Is that Magma?
links to new videos before I release them to the public, as well as a pretty direct line to me. They also often are asked to do things like vote on new video topics. If a monthly subscription isn't something that you'd like to do, but you'd still like to help out the channel, I also have a Teespring store that has Dapper Dino merch, including mugs, blankets, pillowcases, shirts, all sorts of things. And if none of those things are for you, then please just remember to like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and share the video. All of those things really do help the channel grow. Well, I'm the Dapper Dinosaur.